Characters! Yeah, that is quite the broad topic, so much so that I honestly don't even know how to start this video, but you read the title, so I'm sure you know what it's about, as do I. Over the past year or so, I've been getting into more media than ever before, from a lot of shows to a lot of games, and more than that. And one thing that holds true in not just these that I've been watching and playing, but also anything that I've watched or played with a coherent narrative in my entire life, is that I tend to latch onto a lot of different characters from these series. Some a lot more than others. There's usually one or two characters per series that I just really resonate with and become one of my all-time favorites. So as a result, as I've been getting into all this media, I decided it'd be a good idea to count down my top 10 favorite fictional characters. Which seems like quite the gargantuan task because I'm pretty sure there is like an insurmountable number of characters in fiction. Like there's gotta be like billions out there. So to narrow down my top 10 favorites seems like it's gonna be hard, but I'm so particular about crap like this that it honestly wasn't like at all. I honestly got the list together pretty quickly, all things considered, and I think you'll see why I resonate with these specific characters so much as we get into the list. So, like I said, since this is such a broad topic, I honestly have no idea how to start this video in any kind of coherent manner. So I'm just going to get started, and let's get down to my top 10 favorite fictional characters. As of the making of this video anyway. Oh, and also I should probably specify, these are all like only from games and shows, pretty much. Probably speaks for itself, but yeah. And one other ground rule I almost forgot to mention is that I'm only counting one character per series or franchise, with one kind of weird exception to that in this. The reason I'm having to do that is because if I didn't, there would be like at least 3 red versus blue characters on this list, and I don't really want to have it be like that, so we're going to do it this way. So, with all that said, let's get into number 10.
Thought I'd try shooting my way out. Mix things up a little.
Consistent watchers of this now kind of inactive channel will know that I'm a huge Halo fan. Obviously, it goes without saying that I use Halo Machinima in videos like this one just to make them a bit more interesting to watch. And also, I used to make a Halo Machinima, and I'm still kind of making another one. So, lesson learned there, I love Halo. A big part of why I love Halo that I don't get to express very often is I think the games have really good stories, for the most part anyway. And one reason I think these stories resonate with me so much is their main protagonist, John 117, the Master Chief. Master Chief is a bit of an interesting case because in Halo 1 and 2, he's honestly not much of a character. He's more or less just a vessel for the player to put themselves in, to make them more immersed in the game, especially in parts like the Flood reveal in Halo 1, just to make that much more scary. But honestly, one of my favorite types of character is one that starts out as kind of a blank slate for the player to like put themselves into, but as the series go on, they kind of get more developed and have more of a defined character to them. And I think Master Chief is a great example of this, because I think come Halo 3, he really starts to come into his own. We see how much he wants to get Cortana back, and especially in Halo 4, we see how important that relationship is to him, and the damage it causes when it, well, ends because of her rampancy. But Master Chief on his own just represents so much sheer badassery and just so much of that human will and spirit to persevere. I mean, beyond badass moments like giving the Covenant back their bomb, there's just so many great little moments he has throughout the games, whether that be badass or character driven. Regardless of what you think about the 343 games, I personally really don't like them for the most part. I think it's at least worth noting that one of the best things they did was flesh out his character in Halo 4. I actually think Halo 4 might have my favorite story of any Halo game, second to only like Reach, which is slightly better, but Reach doesn't exactly matter to Master Chief's story. Well, I mean it does, but he's not in the game, so you know what I mean. Anyway, I will say one thing I kind of struggle to do with Chief is tell you about him, in terms of like his traits and all that, because he is kind of just a badass super soldier at first glance without much going on, but that's kind of what makes him so cool to me, is that he's just this almost force of nature character, at least in the early Halo games. I mean, the things he does, it's just kind of ridiculous. I know he's a Spartan and all, but like, it's just so cool, man. Like, what do you want me to say? Another thing worth mentioning is that I absolutely love his design, specifically in Halo 2 and 3. You probably infer this based on my personal Spartan that I use, but the Mark 6 armor in Halo 2 and 3 especially is just my favorite. Like, I think it looks so good, so sleek, but also just so, not standardized, but it just looks like a perfect sort of sci-fi super soldier look, and I just love everything about it, from the visor to the actual armor itself. I think they kind of butchered it in some other games. I'm not a fan at all of how bulky it looks in 4 and Reach compared to how like sleek it is in Halo 3. But yeah, I think this design looks so good, especially with Chief's iconic military green color palette. Overall, I know I kind of just blabbered on for this section on Chief, but again, it's not really his characterization itself that makes me love him so much. I do really like his characterization, especially in Halo 4, like I said, but it's more so just how badass he is and just what he represents that just makes me like Master Chief so much. Don't even get me started on his kind of badass little, like, I don't know what you would call it, partnership, acquaintanceship with the Arbiter in Halo 3. Like, that's just chef's kiss. Can we please have these two interact again? Overall, Master Chief absolutely rocks and earns the number 10 spot on the list. Even if he is probably not really a character I resonate with and love that much, and more so a concept that I love. But either way, he's awesome.
Hello, monster guy. I'm Rex. Now thrill me.
So make way to start a revolution. Make way, we're gonna have fun tonight. Make way to start the revolution. Let loose and everything will be alright. Here we go again. The clock's...
So last year around this time, I made one of the best decisions of my entire life. I had come off of watching Invincible and was watching for shows like it, and I saw a little show called Generator Rex that was floating around in that kind of space, and it was sort of advertised like Invincible if it was on Cartoon Network. Truth be told, that is not at all what Generator Rex is, but I'll tell you what Generator Rex is, my second favorite show of all time. Holy underrated. I love everything about Gen Rex. I don't think it even has a bad episode. All 3 seasons of this are just so excellent. I think it's so underrated and absolutely deserves some sort of comeback. And you know what? This show would not be as amazing as it is if not for its incredible main protagonist, Rex Salazar. I think Rex is just such a good and likable main character for so many reasons. In a lot of shows like this one, mainly Ben 10, I think the trap is fallen into that the show goes on for so long that the main protagonist just kind of starts learning the same lessons over and over again. And this definitely happened for Ben 10. But because Generator Rex only has 3 seasons, I think that they were able to do a very nice little arc for Rex across all seasons and keep his characterization consistent while having him actually go through stuff and learn lessons. Early on in the show, I feel like Rex is a little cocky and kind of doesn't take things serious enough. But come season 2 and 3, when you get to big moments like him having to comfort Breach in the season 2 finale, you could tell how serious he is about being a hero. Despite everything he's been through, Rex has amnesia. He does not remember how he was when he was a kid, and actually during the series, he has to grapple with the fact that he wasn't a good person. He sold out his friends, and when he learns that, he does everything he can to make it right. If that's not a true hero, I don't know what is. His characterization across all 3 seasons is just so excellent to me. He's a kid. He's only 15 or 16 years old. He's a little naive. He has a bit of an innocence about him in some scenes, but at the same time, he knows right and wrong, and he wants to do what's right, while also having to deal with the fact that he kind of lives in a lab and is sort of a freak of nature as an Evo, even if he does have the power to cure other Evos. Something awesome too about Rex is his power set. I'm kind of a sucker for characters that have the ability to like manipulate technology and stuff, and I think the way he does it is so sick. The way he can manipulate his nanites into like his builds. I think a lot of his builds are so sick. I'm a huge fan of his slam cannon, which is like that rocket launcher that just picks up debris and shoots it out. That's a really cool idea. He gets a lot of cool builds as the series goes on, especially those ones that are like fused with Ben 10's upgrade. Like, that was so awesome, that crossover. That's one of my favorite episodes. And another reason I like it, despite just the hype moments and aura of Rex fusing with upgrade, is also that I really like the relationship between Ben and Rex in it. Because if you look at it, Rex only has one friend his age, which is Noah, and early on in the series, he actually learns that Noah was actually a spy for Providence the whole time. So even after that happens, I still feel like their friendship isn't entirely organic as a result. But seeing Rex's interactions with Ben, who was actually characterized well here, is just so cool, and I'm really glad he actually got to bond with him a bit. If the series ever comes back, I hope we can see these two interact again in some capacity. It'd be so awesome. But I'm very doubtful that'll happen though, because both of these series are like on hiatus and or cancelled currently. So there's that. I also just enjoy Rex's design. It says a lot about his character. It's simple, but the way he dresses is casual and shows his kind of nonchalant, carefree attitude. But him having his goggles too, which were a gift to him by his surrogate father figure, Six, kind of show his dedication to his work and how much he values his newfound family. That being Six, Holiday, and Bobo. Yeah, the monkey is like one of his closest friends, but don't even worry about that. Towards the end of the series, he also meets his brother and learns about his past, and I quite like the way Rex grapples with Caesar, his brother. He's a goofy character, but at the same time, he's working for the wrong side in Season 3, and we see Rex grapple with that and how much he comes to detest his brother as a result, but in the end, they're able to make up because Caesar had plans to sabotage Van Cleis and Black Knight's plans the whole time. No matter which way you put it, I think Rex just shows what a good person as a protagonist should look like. That is kind of an abstract statement, I know, but despite being a teenager, he is a true hero of the series and does so many great things while being badass and charismatic the whole time. I love the lessons that he learns, I love the arcs he goes on, and I love his power set. Generator Rex is underrated as hell. Go check it out if you haven't, and I hope you enjoy his character as much as I do if you do.
You may have invaded my mind and my body, but there's one thing a Saiyan always keeps: his pride!
However common and done before it might be, the redemption arc will always be one of my favorite character tropes. I really enjoy seeing a villain or even just a bad person in general slowly be able to improve themselves over the course of a series. However, one thing about redemption arcs is I feel like a lot of them kind of happen at the last second for a character, or just before they're taken out of a series, or even worse, killed. Like a good example of this is, spoilers, Rexplode. I feel like he only starts to get super likable in Season 3, and obviously he dies towards the end of Season 3. But I think a redemption arc is done best when it's kind of a series-long thing, and it takes quite a long time for a character to really improve themselves. I don't think there's a better example of this than Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. Now, I've got to be so for real, I love Dragon Ball as a franchise, but I think the best part of it is the memorable characters. I do not think the stories are particularly well written, as I think they kind of retread the same ground a lot of the time, and worse yet, the pacing is honestly atrocious. But again, it's the characters that salvage it for me, and Vegeta is the absolute cream of the crop in my opinion. Obviously, I don't think you need much introduction on who this Saiyan Prince is, but he has quite the history. He started out as a genocidal maniac, a Saiyan who destroyed planets. And when we first meet him in Dragon Ball Z, he is just that, a villain. But in the Frieza saga, we start to see a change in Vegeta as he starts to ally himself with the heroes more and more. Initially, it's just for the purpose of defeating Frieza, but as the series go on, we slowly watch Vegeta turn from the, again, genocidal maniac he once was, to an actually decent husband and father, believe it or not. The Cell Saga is kind of a turning point for him, as he, of course, gets together with Bulma and ends up having a child, but he doesn't actually want to, be present in either of their lives, obviously, because at this point, he is still concerned with his pride and glory first and foremost. Which, I mean, he always is. Vegeta is one of the most prideful characters I've ever seen. And that's usually not a trait I particularly enjoy, but as his arc goes on, I feel like there's almost something heroic about it sometimes. It's hard to explain, but it just has to do with his transformation overall. By the Buu Saga, I feel like enough time has passed that he's really started to change for the better, but we also see him double down in this arc during the Majin Vegeta section of it. And honestly, I really like what was done here. I like how he expresses that he is absolutely torn up about the fact that he will never be able to surpass Goku, to the point where it leads him down this dark path, but he ends up redeeming himself again by the end of it by sacrificing himself to defeat Boo, which doesn't actually end up being for anything, but it's the moment that counts. And the fact that he actually hugs his son for what I think might be the first time in the series beforehand makes it mean a lot. When Vegeta comes back, I think he just continues down this path more and more. We see him be the driving force behind what is eventually able to defeat Boo, with demanding that the people of Earth give Goku their energy for him to make the Spirit Bomb to finally put the pink bastard in his grave. And then comes the kind of time skip to Super, and by this point we see that he actually loves Bulma, believe it or not. Who could forget the My Bulma scene in the Battle of Gods arc, or just the movie, because the arc high-key sucks, me only watch the movie. But anyway, I think that scene, as funny as it might be out of context, goes a long way to show how far he's come. And into Super, I think it could be said that Vegeta is a genuine hero most of the time. Yes, he still has his cocky asshole moments, but he is pretty much the deuteragonist of the series, and at this point he is pretty much Goku's best friend, whether he wants to admit it or not, even if they are rivals above all else. I just really like the way Vegeta's redemption arc is shown in this series. It happens very slowly and gradually over hundreds of episodes, but that makes it feel all the more real to me. It feels like he's actually going through changes that take a long time for him to make, but there's so much catharsis when you finally see him do something heroic like his self-sacrifice to defeat Boo in that arc. Overall, I think that's what I like the most about Vegeta, is how despite being a Saiyan warrior, he kind of has that human element to him that a lot of Dragon Ball characters just don't have. A lot of them are just hype and aura farmers, which is cool in its own right, especially for characters like Piccolo, who do actually have an arc beneath all of that. It's worth saying, too, that there are so friggin' many redeemed villains in Dragon Ball. Hell, I just mentioned Piccolo, which is one of those, but I just don't think any of them do it as great and as realistically as Vegeta does, and that's what puts him on this list, alongside his general badassery that goes along with his pride and all the many cool transformations he has. I'm really looking forward to seeing the Moro arc animated for Dragon Ball Super sometime next year, because from what I understand, that arc does some great stuff with his character and makes him want to atone for what he did in the past when he was a, well, for like the third time, genocidal maniac. So I'm really looking forward to where the next arc takes Vegeta, but for now, he's already secured his place on this list, so he'll definitely be staying, if not going up.
Well, I hope you want a whole heaping help and a butt whooping, cause that's what you're gonna get!
I've made it well known before that I am a huge fan of TMNT across its many iterations, but there are two iterations of the series that stick out the most to me, that being the 2012 and 2003 series. Longtime viewers will remember that the 03 series actually inspired Tales of Solix back in the day, and that is one of my favorite shows of all time. A big reason for that is my favorite character from the show, Casey Jones. What a great adaptation of this character. Casey Jones as a character kind of has a rocky history in TMNT, at least I think he does. In the 1980 show, he was only in 2 episodes, then later in the 2012 show, they turned him into a teenager, and he's just really annoying in that show, and I absolutely despise the whole love triangle going on between him, Donnie, and April. It really pisses me off. Other iterations of the character are just kind of fine, and I don't have much to say about them, but none of them do it like the 03 Casey Jones. This guy rocks. On the surface, he is just another version of Casey that is a justice-obsessed vigilante who wants to put criminals in their place, and that is what he is. He's a little bit crazy and off his rocker sometimes, but in the best way possible that gives him some very endearing moments. But the reason he makes this list is because beneath that brutish exterior, Casey Jones is a very compassionate character, and we see this in multiple episodes. One of my favorite episodes of the series is Fallen Angel. An episode I kind of just went past with no problem on the first watch, but on my second watch of it, I learned to appreciate a lot more. In this episode, we learn a lot more about Casey and see kind of why he hates the Purple Dragon Gang so much, as they try to bring this girl named Angel into their ranks who Casey personally trying to protect, and we see him do everything in his power trying to stop her from getting into the gang because he knows it'd be bad for her. Later on in the series, there's the episode Dragons Rising, not affiliated with that Dragons Rising, which I really don't like, more on that later. But this episode reveals a lot about Casey's character. On the surface, it's kind of just a badass action episode where the Turtles and Casey stop the Purple Dragons from taking off on this plane carrying supplies. But at the end of the episode, we get a very personal moment where Casey visits his father's grave, and we learn that his father was killed by the Purple Dragons. And that's where he gets his philosophy of wanting to help people and making sure that no one ever joins that gang and goes down that path because he doesn't want what happened to other people to happen to him. That's when this character truly clicked for me. I always liked him from his introduction, but this version of Casey Jones just sits with me so much better after learning that backstory. Yes, he is kind of a kooky, funny little guy who goes on cool adventures with the Turtles and sometimes gets into trouble while doing his vigilante work, but at the same time, he does that from a place of genuine compassion and not wanting to see anyone else meet this fate of, losing their family to these criminals who just do it for senseless violence. Going back to what I said about Vegeta earlier, it just adds a human element to this character who is otherwise kind of just a one-note guy. In this case, kind of just a vigilante-type character. But it just goes such a long way. And again, even before this happened, I already thought he was such a fun and enjoyable character. And I'd argue he'd already been humanized a lot by the Fallen Angel episode. But Dragons Rising especially just adds that little bit of extra touch to his character that made him perfect for me. I just love Casey Jones. I love the idea of vigilante heroes in fiction who just kind of do whatever they can with what they have to make a difference. And Casey Jones being that, combined with his backstory, is just so great. This is the best version of Casey Jones in my opinion, and he's my favorite character from across the entire TMNT franchise. Well, obviously because he's on this list. He's just great. I love 03 Casey, and he secures the number 7 spot on this list.
Good afternoon. Nice to meet you, Saul Goodman.
Nice to meet you.
You're not that lawyer on late night television, are you?
Better call Saul. I get it all the time.
I realize that it may be a little bit jarring having a character from a show like Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad on this list after I just went over a few literal cartoon characters, but honestly, Better Call Saul is one of my favorite shows of all time, definitely in the top 5. I like Breaking Bad too, but Better Call Saul I always connected with a little bit more, and the reason for that is of course its main protagonist, Jimmy McGill, later known as Saul Goodman. Now understand that for the purposes of this list, I am mostly going to be talking about him as he is in Better Call Saul. I still love his character in Breaking Bad, but he is mostly comic relief in Breaking Bad. He still has some good moments, but that's what he is, and I enjoy his character much more in Better Call Saul when he's taken a little more seriously and has proper stuff to go through. I think a lot of people are not huge fans of the first few seasons of Better Call Saul. I think they're usually seen as kind of slow, and they are compared to the first few seasons of Breaking Bad, which are much more fast-paced and have more action going on. But I love these first few seasons. I love the vibe of them, and more importantly, I love Jimmy's character development because it all centers around his brother, Chuck McGill. In the first few seasons of Better Call Saul, we see Jimmy on this uphill battle of trying to prove himself to his brother after he had previously gone to prison only for Chuck to bail him out, and then later try to become a lawyer only for Chuck to, again, put him down at every opportunity. We see a real uphill struggle that Jimmy goes through as he tries to become a popular public defender and desperately wants to get into HHM, which is Chuck and Howard Hamlin's law firm, but they just won't take him. And by the time they finally do, he's in a different place in life. He goes through a lot of very real struggles, from his relationship with Kim to just not being able to afford to pay the rent on their shared law firm they get in, I think it was season 2 or 3. But come season 4 and 5 is when a real change starts to happen with Jimmy, and we see him go down the path of becoming Saul Goodman. After Chuck's death, that is. Chuck's death is a huge moment and turning point. It's a very shocking and sad scene. As much as I hate the character of Chuck as a person, I think he was very well written and really went a long way to showing us the transformation from this fairly well-meaning guy who just did the wrong thing a lot of the time to, well, a con man pretty much, which he was a con man before, but we see him fall back into that as he turns into Saul Goodman. that scene where he initially says that in the season 4 finale is weirdly haunting in a way, because you know he's about to go down that path that leads him towards everything he goes through in Breaking Bad, eventually landing him in prison in the series finale, but more on that later. Of course, he obviously goes through way more stuff towards the end of the series, as that whole arc of him and Mike stranded in the desert, all leading up to the eventual death of Howard after he and Kim just started scamming too far. And that's when the kind of fall of everything happens, and we see him go to the state he is in Breaking Bad, where he's just kind of a shell of who he used to be, and it's really sad in a way, because, again, as I've said before, he was a well-meaning guy prior. He did the wrong thing sometimes, mainly the scams he ran, but he did it because he wanted to be a good lawyer a lot of the time. But in Breaking Bad, he's just kind of a sleazy asshole, and he's funny, but it just makes watching Breaking Bad so different after watching Better Call Saul, and that's one thing I love about what they did with Jimmy in Better Call Saul so much, because it adds so much context, and honestly makes his comic relief persona in Breaking Bad just a little bit sad to watch. One of my favorite things about Jimmy, though, is his ultimate ending at the end of Better Call Saul. After falling back into scamming, he finally gets arrested and charged for everything he was a part of in Breaking Bad and before, and he actually doesn't try to get his way out of this one. He faces the music and he accepts the 80 plus years he's going to get in prison, meaning that the rest of his life will be spent there. Now, yeah, he does have things relatively well off. He gets to be visited by Kim, all the prisoners respect him, but it's more so just that message of him choosing to face the music here and choosing to get what he deserves after all the things he's done throughout his life as Saul Goodman, more so than Jimmy McGill. There's a lot more I could say about him, but honestly I don't think I'm qualified enough to thoroughly and intricately analyze the ins and outs of a show as greatly written as Better Call Saul. It's not my favorite show, even if it is top 5, but I'm going to say right now that it is the objectively best made show I've ever seen, and it's one of my favorites and always will be, and the main reason for that you have to thank is the character of Jimmy McGill.
Maybe not, but I am her son. And I made her a promise to stand up to tyrants like you, always!
So there's that meme that goes around of men will make a choice at 6 years old and stick with it, and it has all the original Ninjago Ninja. Well, lo and behold, my choice was Cole. I love Cole so much. He is such a great character. But he wasn't always that way. I think in the early Ninjago seasons, Cole is kind of just eh. Compared to the other ninja, he doesn't get nearly as much stuff to do. He does have one really good episode in Season 1 where we get more insight into his relationship with his father and kind of his backstory, and that's a good episode. I like Cole's true potential scene as well. It was the first big character moment he had in the series, and I really enjoyed it. It wasn't always one of my favorites, but in recent years, I've come to appreciate it a lot more. Where I think Cole's character really started to take off was Season 4, where they started giving him more to do with the arc where he was a prisoner in Jen's Noodle Factory and was trying to help Zane escape as well, and all that. But Season 5 is where he really got the most to do, and we got the Cole as a ghost arc. And this arc honestly didn't do too much for his character, but it started to put Cole in the spotlight more, which paved the way for the future things like Day of the Departed, and eventually what finally cemented Cole as I think the best character in Ninjago and my favorite characters of all time, Sons of Garmadon. The post-movie era, I think, did some questionable decisions with some characters' arcs, but Cole, I think, got the best stuff to work with, because in this season his character is just so great. We see how selfless and humble he is, but also we see how important his relationship with Master Wu is, and this gives us, I think, the most insight into Cole's character that anything had up to this point. We see how important the ninja team is to him, and how he is, in both a literal and metaphorical sense, the rock that holds the team together. As much as I despise Ninjago Crystallized, I think it did an excellent job in one regard, and that was how Cole was the one who had the initial idea to get the team back together and wanted to do that. That's such a nice callback to how not only he used to be the leader of the team back in the day, but also just his general personality and how much this team matters to him. Humility, I think, is Cole's best trait, and it's seen a lot in the series from this example to many more times. He's just such a good person and a good guy in general. And in addition to a lot of his badass powers and cool moments of the series, that is what lands him on this list ultimately. His focus season, Master of the Mountain, is also probably the best season by Wildbrain, I have to say. Well, not probably, it actually just is the best season by Wildbrain. I absolutely love the development he gets in it. We see his relationship with Wu explored in it, which I already said I'm a big fan of, but also we get insight into why he does what he does. He will honor his mother's dying wish for the rest of his life, and I think that's really sweet that that's why he does what he does. Unfortunately though, Cole has actually been knocked back a couple of spots on this list. There was definitely a time where he would have been in the top 3 because I absolutely love Cole, but Dragon's Rising is a series I have a lot of issues with. I'm not going to get into them all today, but I do just have to mention Cole has been absolutely shafted in Dragon's Rising. He gets barely anything to do, and when he does get stuff to do, I think it's absolutely horrible and makes no sense for his character. I really dislike the fact that out of all the ninja, they chose him to be the one to get a new family and leave the team. He should be the last ninja that should happen to, because as I mentioned, he is the one the team means the most to. He is the rock of the team. I don't think that should have happened for his character. For another character, I don't know, Zane or something, maybe, but not him. So yeah, I'll save my Dragon's Rising rant for a future video because I have a lot of thoughts on it, but just know I do have issues with his current characterization, but that's not going to stop how much I love the original Cole, the real Cole, if you will. Cole also gets by far the most amount of power-ups out of all the ninja, and if it were another ninja, I might have issue with that, but because it's him, my GOAT, I don't really have any issues with that, and I think they're all awesome. The Earth Punch was a cool little bonus ability he got in The Departed, and I'm glad it's still around. And then he got his Spinjitzu Burst, which, while only used for one season, was a cool little one-episode power-up he used to defeat the Skull Sorcerer in a very powerful moment. And then he's got his modern kind of Earth Mech ability, which is pretty cool, and I'm actually glad it came back in Dragon's Rising Season 4. Overall, once again, there's a lot more I could say about Cole because I just love this character so much, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to keep it brief and stop it there. He's my favorite ninja, and I've seen him getting a lot more popular in the post-movie era, which makes me very happy, honestly. I'm glad that he's finally getting the recognition that I think he's always deserved. Even if his character did get an increase in writing quality after the movie, I always liked him, and he's always had that core trait of humility, which will always make him my favorite ninja.
I don't know if you've ever let someone down, got your ass kicked, or straight up failed. But those are the moments that define us. They push you further than you've ever thought possible and force you to make choices. No matter what the cost.
Yeah, I know. What are the odds we have two guys named Cole back-to-back on this list? Anyway, Cole McGrath, specifically the Good Karma or canon version of him, is the most recent add to this list, as last year I was browsing r/top character tropes, which is a subreddit I like to look on sometimes for writing ideas and just cool little pieces of lore I like to learn. And I saw a bunch of stuff about Infamous at one point, and it made me really want to play the games. So lo and behold, late last July, I went to CM Games and I picked up Infamous 2, and also, lo and behold, this is now my favorite game of all time for a multitude of reasons. Dude, please, I beg you play Infamous 2 if you haven't. This game is amazing. And on top of the gameplay just being so great, a big reason why I love this game and furthermore this series so much is its story and the arc of the main character, Cole McGrath. Cole embodies one of my favorite character archetypes, which is a simple kind of, I'm not sure what term exactly to use here, but it's kind of an unassuming regular person who gets great power and has to grapple with that and do the right thing with it. And I think Cole does this the best of maybe any character I've ever seen. I love his arc. At the beginning of Infamous 2, he is kind of a failing guy. He dropped out of college and he's got a job as a bike courier, with it even being stated that his parents lie to other people and tell them he's a school teacher just so he seems like a more successful guy. Cole is kind of going through a, not midlife crisis, it's just kind of a depressing period, I guess. But that all changes with the Ray Sphere incident, when he finally gets his conduit powers. Now, this moment is huge for his character for more reasons than you would think. It goes without saying this is the birth of his character as it is in the games as a conduit hero, but later in Infamous 2 we find out that he indirectly started the plague that is killing off most of America in Infamous 2. And in that game he has to grapple with his guilt, but ultimately come to terms with the sacrifice he needs to make everything right. But sticking with Infamous 1, I like how Cole's portrayed in this game, because if you go down the good karma path, which again is kind of the correct one if you ask me, he's doing everything he can to do the right thing here and even repair things with his girlfriend Trish, but he's getting backstabbed at every turn, whether that be by Moya or Zeke, his best friend. The game ends up with Cole in a pretty bad spot too, as even though he's defeated Kessler, he gets the absolute bomb revelation that Kessler is him from the future, come back in time to make him into a more successful conduit, and one that can defeat the Beast, which arrives in Infamous 2. At the beginning of 2, the Beast absolutely demolishes Cole and destroys Empire City, making all of Cole's efforts to save it in the first game completely in vain, which starts Infamous 2 on an incredible, very subversive note, and sets up Cole's arc for this game. In this game, I feel like he's mostly trying to work through his guilt for what happened in Empire City, as we see him doing everything he can to make up for this by helping the people of New Marais, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that he caused the plague due to the Ray Sphere incident. This is a great twist, I think, and it goes that much further to kind of expand on Infamous's moral message that doing the right thing isn't always easy. Because what caused Cole to get his powers, which eventually led him to be able to do a lot of heroic work in the future, was also what started this plague that is the central conflict of Infamous 2. I also really like a lot of Cole's relationships with characters in Infamous 2. In particular, I love the kind of redemption arc that Zeke goes on and how Cole learns to forgive him and accept him for who he is. Also, this is a minor thing, but I really like the fact that they recasted Cole in Infamous 2. I think his voice in 1 fits him very well for that game, actually, especially with its dark and gritty vibe, and the fact that they have such a kind of gravelly voice to accompany him works very well, but I think his recast in Infamous 2 makes him feel all the more real, which is I think what that game was very much going for, and it succeeds. Then there's Cole's ending. I think the ending of Infamous 2 is a little controversial, and while as much as I would have loved for Cole to survive and us to get future Infamous games starring him, this ending is so good and emotional, man. The fact that you have to play through it as well just adds that little extra bit of emotional sting to it, because it's you that activates the RFI and ultimately kills Cole and all other conduits, but at the same time in the narrative, it's Cole's choice. He knows what he has to do to save humanity because this is what his path has brought him to. I like what they do with Quo here too, really subverting the evil and good karma thing that 2 had going on, where you kind of either sided with Nyx or Quo, and Quo ended up being the one to go against you on the good path, but that's more about her character and not Cole's. I just love how that arc ends up with him having to accept the fact that, yes, what he did caused the horrible events that have transpired in this game, but it wasn't directly his fault, and again, he's doing everything he can to fix it. This guy just goes through so much shit, but the fact that he still comes out a hero on top of it, and more or less a martyr for the people of New Marais as well, is just so great. This is minor too, but I really like Cole's design, especially in 2. As iconic as his yellow jacket from 1 is, I think his design in 2 just gives him so much more character. The amp is such a cool weapon and a great way to channel his powers, and I like the fact that he has climbing tape on his hands now too, which really gives you more insight into his interest in urban exploration. I think that's such a cool character trait of his too, because obviously there's a lot of parkour going on in these games, so the fact that Cole was somebody who was already interested in urban exploration even before getting these superhuman abilities is just really cool and adds a lot of depth to him and more kind of reason behind why the games play like they do. His powers, while simple lightning powers, do have a lot of cool stuff you can do with them in the games, but again, that's more of a gameplay situation than a character thing. I just love Cole so much for the way he rises to the occasion after getting these powers that he never asked for, and the way he grapples with the consequences of them. I miss him so bad. A part of me wants Sucker Punch to bring him, or hell, just Infamous at all back, but at the same time, I'm not sure I'm willing to sacrifice that perfect ending from Infamous 2. I do like Evo Karma Cole as well, but I think he's a far less realistic version of the character, and I just much prefer the canon Good Karma version. So yeah, he is the most recent add on this list, but the fact that he is this high up already is really good to show you how much I love the Infamous games and how well made they are.
Hey, Meta! Settle a bet, would you? Does that thing kind of look like a big cat to you? Well, I got the blues in a headline. I got the blues in my shotgun.
Hey, this is Grouper Games from the future here. I forgot to mention in the voiceover for this part, this is technically that one cheater position I talked about where I said like I wouldn't have more than one character from the same franchise, because Sarge isn't technically a Halo character, but Red vs. Blue is a Halo show, so that technically kind of makes him the second Halo character on this list, but like, Red vs. Blue isn't an official Halo thing, so like, who cares? Just wanted to clear that up real fast. This is the only exception to that rule, but it barely even is one, so back to the video. I'm not sure if I've directly stated this on my channel before, but Red vs. Blue is my favorite series and quite possibly just favorite piece of media of all time. I love this series, and I don't think I'd love it quite as much if it were not for my favorite character from it, Sarge. Sarge is such a great character, man. To get the obvious out of the way, this guy is a riot. There are a lot of hilarious Red vs. Blue characters, like there's Donut's whole fruity antics. Caboose is pretty beloved as well, and while I don't find him as funny as some people might, he's still quite a funny character. But Sarge's brand of humor is just so funny to me, with all these elaborate-ass plans he makes and all those stupid, like, code word things, and of course the iconic Puma bit. He's just so funny to me. He has so many funny running gags in the series, and I'm really glad that very few of them were ever actually dropped, and for the most part, these gags lasted for the entire series. But above Sarge's kind of comic relief aspects, I think you have a really great arc in there. Obviously, it goes without saying, the first 5 seasons of Red vs. Blue are quite goofy and don't take themselves very seriously. As a result, Sarge falls into the trope of being the kind of red soldier that just wants to stop at nothing to defeat the Blues. He's really the only one that actually cares about the quote-unquote war going on in the first 5 seasons. But when the series takes a tonal shift with Season 6, Sarge kind of starts to have an arc, because by this point on in the series, it's less about Red versus Blue, and more about the Reds and Blues having to overcome their differences and work together to defeat common enemies like the Meta. This all comes to a head in Season 8, where I think Sarge gets his best moment in the series. It's in this season where Sarge learns that he and the rest of the Reds and Blues are simulation troopers, meaning that they are not real soldiers. They were simply conscripted to fight in this quote-unquote war as training for the freelancer soldiers. This revelation gives us Sarge's first big character moment in the series because he realizes he's a pawn. Again, he was the only one that actually cared about this war and winning it. So when he finds out that this was all fake, he's crushed. But then comes the fact when they discover that Church and Tex need their help over at Signwinder. Nobody wants to do this except Caboose because they all think it's a death wish, and by this point in the series, again, they found out they're just pawns, so what's even the point? But who is the one to rally them but Sarge, with his incredible speech asking that pivotal question of the series, "You ever wonder why we're here?" Sarge has a lot of great inspirational speeches in the series, but I think this is his best one and his best moment in just the whole series overall. It's so good, man. I love the way this shows how he's overcome his hatred of the Blues and learned to work together against a common enemy. Now, mind you, this development does unfortunately get put on the back burner a lot of the times, but when this is front and center, I think these are some of the best moments of the entire show. Like, yes, as much as I love the moments in RVB with absolutely ballistic fight scenes, this might be one of my top 3 favorite moments in the series, just for how well written it is and how much it summarizes his character up to this point. It's so great. This scene alone is a huge part of why I love Sarge so much. He gets similar scenes to this later on in like Season 10 as well, but this one is just so perfect. Even in the fight scene that follows this scene later in Season 8, we can see that this development has come a long way because even when he's fighting the Meta and has an easy shot at him, he doesn't take the shot because the Meta is holding Tucker and he doesn't want to hurt Tucker, who he now sees as, if not a friend, at least an ally. Going into Chorus, once again I do feel like Sarge's development was put on the back burner a bit, But I think what he got in Season 8 was so great that I honestly don't even need that much more from him in terms of development. He can just keep being the funny, endearing commander he is, and I'll be fine with that. He has plenty of fun moments in Chorus too, so who am I to complain? Unfortunately though, I do have to say I'm not a fan of his death at all. In Season 19 Restoration, Sarge does get killed off, and I'm not against this, with him being not necessarily a mentor, but a superior to characters like Simmons and Griff. I feel like it makes sense for him to be killed off to further their development, but the way they did it here just does not sit right with me. I feel like it's played too straight in a way, and it doesn't even feel like Sarge is the one saying these words. That said, though, this scene can be interpreted as non-canon, and actually is by a lot of people, including myself. And that brings me to my final point, which is that final scene of Season 13. This is where I think Red vs. Blue really ends. I think it brings every character's story to a full circle in a way with their last lines. I've seen a comment summarizing this, but I just think every character's lines in this scene just summarize their character arc so well. All he gets is a little quote saying, like, "Well, boys, it's an honor fighting alongside you," or something like that. And the fact that he has a quote so simple like that kind of just symbolizes that he's not wisecracking at the Blues or anything. He's just ready to fight and possibly die alongside these guys who are now pretty much a found family. Just, again, perfectly summarizes his character arc to me. And it's so great. Once again, there's so much more I could go into with Sarge, whether it be his funny antics with pretending to understand Lopez and shit like that, but he's just such a funny character, and even though he is hilarious to me, he's got so many endearing character moments beneath that. I love Sarge. I think he's become one of the most popular Red vs. Blue characters, and that's for a very, very good reason.
I never cared about justice, and I don't recall ever calling myself a hero. I have always only fought for the people I believe in. I won't hesitate, and if an enemy appears in front of me, I will destroy it!
Compared to a lot of the other characters on this list, I feel like Zero doesn't have that much material to actually consume with him in it, because there's only so much story in the Mega Man X and Zero games, and there's very little content outside of that that has him in it. And that alone, and the fact that he's that high up despite that, should tell you just how badass Zero is. I love Zero. In the early X games, obviously there's not much story or dialogue to be had, but even in those games, you can just tell he's a real badass. And by the time the games actually get properly implemented stories within them, he cements his place as a great character. Mock the story of X4 all you want for its really goofy voice acting in the English version, but I quite like what they did with Zero here, with the way he has to grapple with the fact that he was created for destruction, and this is a thing of his that he has to work through his entire character arc. After this and some of the other X games post X5, I feel like some questionable decisions were made with his character. See my X6 video for more on that regarding his numerous fake-out deaths, but in the X game, Zero is just such a badass, and I love that element they add of him having to work through the fact that, again, he was made by Wily and is a tool of destruction. But the fact that he knows that and still continues to do all the good he does is just so awesome, and honestly, on top of his badass design in Z-Saber, is one of my favorite things about him. But then we do a time skip to the Mega Man Zero games. Now, commenting quickly on his design, I gotta say, the original Zero is one of my favorite character designs of all time. I mean, he looks incredible. He just looks so damn cool, and I think his awesome design is half of where his badass factor comes from. And I gotta say, I do not like the Mega Man Zero art style for him. He doesn't look like the same character. I understand this is hundreds of years later and a different art style, but I kinda wish they at least kept his helmet shape and shoulder pads. But a slightly different design is a very, very small aspect of why I love this character so much, because I love what they did with him in the Zero games. It shows us so much about his character, even with the kind of limited stuff they had to work with this narrative on the Game Boy Advance. In the beginning of the first game, when CL wakes him up, despite having amnesia and knowing nothing about what's going on, the first thing he does is protect her and help her escape this place where he's been held for the past 100 or so years. And that's just so cool and so telling about his character that is the first thing he does. He does seem to regain his memories throughout the Zero games, as he does eventually remember X, and he has some good moments in Zero 1 and 2 besides that, but where his character really takes off is Zero 3, when he finds out that he is not in his original body. I kind of mistook this twist at first and thought he was finding out that he wasn't the original Zero, but it's just his body, and I like the whole fact that even though this revelation would have shocked any other character in this series, he doesn't really care all that much, and despite the kind of show shock that comes from having to destroy his original body, and subsequently having to watch X finally meet his final death at the end of this game, I just love the way that he keeps pushing on, and doesn't let any of it faze him, and he's ready to do what he has to do to take down Weil and end the Zero series on a depressing but bittersweet note with his final sacrifice. There's a lot of debate I see over whether or not this is actually the death of Zero or if it's just another fake out. I think, kind of similar to what I said on Cole McGrath, for him to come back, I think it would kind of cheapen this, because I really like the way his death plays out, with the way he takes down one more tyrant who is just trying to use their machines for evil. It all calls back to his ultimate backstory, since, as I've mentioned several times, he was the final creation of Dr. Wily. Unfortunately, beyond that, there's just not a whole lot that can be said about Zero because of the limited amount of media he's in, but from what we see of him, he's just so coded. He's so badass, and he's so fun to play in most of the games that you can play as him. I even prefer playing as him in like X4 because I feel like the combat is a bit easier with him. I gotta say too, I really like his friendship with X. I think it's so cool that the final creations of Light and Wily ended up being best friends, even though one of them was created for evil. I like how he's sort of a big brother to X, but by the end of the series, in like X7 and 8, even though the story of X7 kind of sucks, they seem more like brothers and equals than anything else because of everything X has been through. After all, he did say in X1 that X had the power to surpass him one day, and the fact that he puts his best friend on that pedestal and wants to help him get better, even if it's kind of a subtly shown trait of his, is just so great, and again, just goes back to Zero's sheer selflessness, which is a trait you'll probably notice I've said about a lot of the characters on this list. But yeah, once again, I wish there was more stuff I could cite from when it comes to Zero's character, but you get the gist. He's so cool and such a badass, and the fact that he gets number 2 despite having such limited appearances is honestly just such a testament to how great of a character he is. But we only have one left, so who's going to top the list? Well, you probably know already if you know me. I'm assuming most of you watching this don't, so maybe it'll be a surprise, maybe it won't. But before we get to number 1, let's go through a few honorable mentions real fast. Some of these are double-ups from series I love so much that I just couldn't leave a second character out, and others are just characters that nearly made the list but just missed out.
In failure.
But I've come to an even more important decision. I'm going to join the Avatar, and I'm going to help him defeat you.
Really? It's now yours. You're joking, right? I don't care about titles or power. I just want to be number 1. Then master the ways of the assassin. Here's your ticket to paradise, old man.
Farrah Fawcett spray?
Yeah, Farrah Fawcett. You tell anyone I just told you that, and your ass is grass, you're dead, Henderson. You understand?
Yep.
Okay.
For as long as I can remember, I've been lied to, taken advantage of, shot in the back, and left for dead. And now, I have a way out of all of this. What in the hell makes you think that I'm going to ask for it?
Hey guys, question for you. So have you decided yet which regiment you're gonna join? I've made my choice. It'll be rough, but damn it, I'm gonna join the Scouts!
is where I wanna be with you. I know, Lord knows I know.
You want the treasure, Rafe? It's all yours. Holy shit.
Ever see your family again?
Family. Family. No. Rose. I have to save my daughter.
And without further ado, my favorite character of all time is...
If the world chooses to become my enemy, I will fight like I always have.
Alright, so I know how this might look. This might make me look like a corny Sonic fan who's stuck in the 2000s, but dude, I think Shadow the Hedgehog has been my favorite character for as long as I can remember. And to be honest, that's kind of what I am, is a corny 2000s Sonic fan, so take that for what you will. Gosh, where do I even start with Shadow? From the moment I first got into Sonic when I was like 5 or 6 years old, I knew this character was awesome. And to this day, I still believe that, and I still love him as much as I did when I first got into the series. There's so much to be said about Shadow. He's got such a cool backstory, such a great demeanor, and such a great design, but honestly, most of what I love about the character comes from one game. Believe it or not, that game is Sonic 06. Now, I don't think I've ever gotten to express this in a video before, but I love Sonic 06. I am willing to admit any day that it is horrible, but I love it, and a huge part of why is what they did with Shadow in this game. Now, in this game, Shadow is an agent of Gun, those of course being the people that killed his best friend, Maria, when he was young on the Ark. So, from the outside looking in, this seems like a really weird thing to do with this character. But the comics reveal a bit more about this. See, Maria's dying wish is obviously for Shadow to protect the Earth, a goal that he lost sight of during Adventure 2 since Gerald tampered with his memories. In the comics, even though they're not canon, Shadow explains that he joined up with Gun because it's the best way he knows to help protect the Earth, joining up with people that have experience doing that and the resources to help him do that as well. I think that makes a lot of sense and is so telling of Shadow's character, that he would go out of his way to join the organization he detests, all for the greater good and saving people. Obviously, they're not quite the same organization they would have been 50 years ago, and are run by a man that actually respects Shadow now, but still, just that small little subtle hint there of how far Shadow's progressed in this game is so great. I just love his characterization in this game, how he's got this strong foundation and won't be broken by anything. Whether that be Mephiles' reveal that he gets sealed by the humans in the future despite all he's done for them, or the fact that one of his best friends, Omega, is the reason for that. But I don't just love Shadow because of his 06 characterization. I think it's the best version of the character, and I'm very glad that modern versions are kind of calling back to it and bringing that characterization back, like in Shadow Generations. But I think in most games pre-modern era, he's so great. Obviously, in Adventure 2, he was this great, new, mysterious antagonist who had an awesome little last-minute redemption arc at the end, but I even like him in Heroes, because despite his amnesia, he is so quick to become friends with Team Dark. I will say, there are some mistips of this character in the Shadow 05 game because of the kind of weird canonicity of that game, but I do like Black Doom as a villain for him, and the reveal that he is based off an alien. It adds a lot more to kind of his search for identity in that game, even though that plot wasn't exactly well written. But ultimately, Shadow just envelops so many of my favorite tropes. I'd say that Sonic Adventure 2 and his character as a whole really got me interested in kind of sci-fi conspiracy stories of the like. I'm not saying Sonic Adventure 2 is like the best of that sort of thing or anything. I still think the game has a great story, but it got me interested in the genre at least, which has to count for something. Shadow's character as well made me kind of have this fascination with artificially created people or artificially created characters that are like, not necessarily androids, but like whatever he is, you know, some kind of like science experiment created from Hedgehog and Black Arm's DNA. That sounds probably strange, I know, but it's still worth noting that his character got me interested in a lot of different archetypes. His design is also just so sick. He is kind of just a dark-looking version of Sonic, but I don't think you can easily deny he looks badass, and I love the fact that the rings on his shoes and gloves are actually inhibitors that keep him from pulling out his whole power, which is completely destructive. Shadow's power set is also just so cool. It's a little bit unclear on whether or not he needs the Chaos Emeralds to use some of his powers, but either way they're really cool. I love the spear, the blast, the Chaos Control itself, it's all really cool. He's just such a cool character, man. I love so much about Shadow, even though his character was mishandled a bit in the 2010s. I'm so glad that thanks to Sonic 3 and Shadow Generations, he is finally back to that great character he once was. He just does so much right, man. He's got a redemption arc, which I already said was great. He's got a great design and power set, and he's one of those characters that holds true to their morals no matter what. I love Shadow, man. Like, there's so much more I could say about him, but he's just such a great character. Make fun of me for my favorite character of all time being a Sonic character all you want, but I don't think this will ever change. Shadow is just great. And he is my favorite character of all time. And that actually caps out the list. Those are my top 10 favorite characters. No matter how odd of a list it might be to you, it is definitely my opinion, and I don't see it ever changing. And outside of a few places on this list changing out, I see a lot of these characters being locks for quite some time. But again, I've gotten into so much media that many characters could come in here and take some spots, but probably never that number one spot. I don't see that changing. I've yapped a lot in this video about many different things, so I think I'm going to have to call it there before this one ends up getting way too long. With that said, I've been Grouper Games, and I hope you all enjoy and look forward to more videos in the somewhat near future. We'll have to see. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.